By now you've heard the story. The brightest minds in classified government research are dropping off the map one by one. It's not like they're retiring or taking private sector jobs, but they're either vanishing into thin air or turning up dead under suspicious circumstances. That's the nightmare scenario that has absolutely hijacked the internet this year. It has become a full-blown panic that feels like a sci-fi thriller playing out in real time right in our feeds. The core claim of the 2026 missing scientist panic is that 10 to 11 top-tier researchers tied to highly sensitive aerospace, nuclear, and advanced energy products have been systemically silenced. And the spark that lit the powder keg was the sudden disappearance of retired Air Force Major General William Neal McCasland. Almost overnight, the internet mixed his vanishing into these other tragedies, and these rumors have mutated. Suddenly, people are claiming these individuals were close to leaking the truth about reversed engineers, UFOs, and next-generation classified tech. What has started as late-night posts on fringe message boards has exploded into mainstream news, eventually forcing Congress to demand answers and putting the White House on the defensive. It's a compelling story that smells like a government cover-up. But the truth is, this is all an overblown conspiracy theory that falls apart when you actually look at what's going on here. We're going to break down the actual facts behind these tragic events. And once you look past the hype and look at the real timelines and evidence, it becomes clear why there's no grand nefarious plot holding all this together. Let's get spooky. Hey, spooky people. It's your best friend, Kenny. On the brisk morning of February 27th, 2026, the quiet streets of residential Albuquerque, New Mexico, witnessed the beginning of what would mutate into a nationwide digital hysteria. William Neal McCasland, who was a 68-year-old retired United States Air Force Major General, walked out of his home on Quail Run Court in the Northeast Heist area. He left behind his glasses, his cell phone, his watch. And when his wife, Susan, returned from her morning errands, she found the house empty. The only items missing were her husband, his hiking boots, and a .38 caliber revolver. Local authorities soon issued a silver alert, a public notification designed to locate missing and vulnerable seniors. The police bulletin noted that McCasland had recently been suffering from mental fog and that his unannounced departure on foot into the rugged terrain of the nearby Sandia Mountains was an immediate risk to his health and survival. To the local police departments, it was a personal, common human tragedy. An aging man had wandered into the wilderness while experiencing cognitive decline. However, William Neal McCasland was not just an ordinary retiree. He had served as a high-ranking commander of the Air Force Research Laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This military installation is a facility that is cemented in American folklore as the epicenter of extraterrestrial and UFO lore, and famously rumored to house the wreckage of the 1947 Roswell crash. To the search and rescue teams hiking the Sandia Mountains, McCasland was a vulnerable person in need of medical attention. But to the modern internet, he was the missing puzzle piece in a grand, sinister plan. Within days of the silver alert, McCasland's disappearance was stripped of its human context and fed directly into a sprawling online narrative. Reddit threads and viral TikTok videos began linking his wandering into the desert with the deaths and disappearances of other researchers, engineers, and other government people across the country. By April 2026, the internet had constructed a terrifying, fabricated reality. A secret cabal was systematically assassinating or kidnapping America's brightest scientific minds to suppress classic knowledge regarding advanced energy, weapons, and UFOs. The story roared from the obscure corners of the web directly into the White House, prompting congressional investigations and statements from the presidents of the United States, as well as a full-scale FBI probe directed by Kash Patel. But beneath the breathless headlines and the viral speculation is a simpler truth. The missing scientist conspiracy of 2026 is an example of apophenia, the human mind's desperate need to find meaning and patterns in random, tragic noise. This story ignited in early 2026 and thrived in a cultural and political environment that is full of institutional distrust. The American public has deep-seated skepticism towards scientific and governmental authorities. The public is highly susceptible to stories suggesting that the government was hiding world-changing truths. With this baseline feeling as an amplifier in the modern media ecosystem. The engagement-driven algorithms that reward outrage spun into high gear. The conspiracy theory took off when amateur internet sleuths took McCasland's military background and placed it against decades-old UFO mythology. McCasland had a historical association with Tom DeLonge, from Blink-182, who is also a prominent figure in the Disclosure Moment, an advocacy group pushing for government transparency regarding extraterrestrial life. When users realized that a man who once spoken to DeLonge about aerospace research had suddenly vanished into the desert, the fire became uncontrollable. Users on TikTok and Reddit began aggressively putting together lists of individuals related to the scientific community who had died or gone missing over the past 3 or 4 years. The definition of scientists on these lists has been stretched to its breaking point, allowing the story to absorb anyone who has ever set foot in a laboratory or worked for a defense contractor, regardless of whatever their actual job was. Once a list of 10 or 11 names was compiled, the volume of tragedies was presented as mathematically impossible to be coincidental. The story mutated and spread across the digital landscape. The culprit shifts depending on the political leanings of the forum discussing it. Some factions blame the Chinese or Iranian assassination squads targeting Americans' nuclear superiority. Other communities point to the shadow government cabal desperate to cover these things up. The common thread was the absolute rejection of coincidence and human mortality. Once the viral list of 11 missing scientists is looked at with basic scrutiny, the narrative collapses instantly. The deaths and disappearances were scattered across multiple years, separated by thousands of miles, and resulted from completely unrelated causes ranging from natural disease to mental illness to random street crime to tragic wilderness accidents. On the viral list is Monica Reza. She was a 60-year-old, highly accomplished aerospace engineer and served as the director of materials at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. In the conspiracy, Reza was allegedly targeted because her professional work involved advanced rocket engines and materials processing. Theorists claimed she was either assassinated by foreign agents to cripple American aerospace dominance or abducted by government operatives to silence her. The reality of her disappearance is grounded entirely in the hazardous nature of the California wilderness. On Sunday, June 22nd, 2025, 8 months before General McCasland vanished in New Mexico, by the way, Reza went hiking with a friend in the rugged San Gabriel Mountains within the Angeles National Forest. The pair went on a strenuous hike and successfully summited Mount Waterman via the Upper West Ridge Trail. During their descent back to the trailhead, the two hikers became separated. According to the police reports and the friend's own account, he walked a few feet ahead. When he turned around to check on her, Reza smiled and waved at him. When he looked back a second time there moments later, she had completely vanished. The terrain of Mount Waterman is treacherous, defined by steep sudden drop-offs and dense brush that can obscure a fallen hiker from even a few feet away. Following her disappearance, an extensive search operation was launched. A community group quickly swelled to over 150 experienced mountaineers, canyoners, rock climbers, and trail runners who combed the off-trail boulders and cliffs from sunrise to sunset. There was no evidence of foul play, there were no mysterious vehicles spotted at the trailhead, and no signs of state-sponsored abduction. Monica Reza's fate is a sorrowful example of how quickly the natural environment can claim even a highly experienced and prepared hiker. Her disappearance was a wilderness tragedy and then was exploited by people on the internet, refusing to accept that a brilliant NASA engineer could succumb to the wilderness. Perhaps the most egregious misrepresentation pushed by these conspiracy theorists involves the death of Nuno Loureiro. Loureiro was a 47-year-old Portuguese physicist, an acclaimed professor of nuclear science and engineering at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and the director of the Center for Plasma and Fusion Science. Because Loureiro's academic work involved complex, nonlinear plasma dynamics, magnetic reconnection, and advanced fusion research, his murder in December 2025 was immediately seized upon as undeniable proof of a war against advanced energy scientists. The official investigation tells a story that does not have any international espionage or dark government secrets. Loureiro was shot and killed at his home in Brookline, Massachusetts on a Tuesday in mid-December. 2 days prior to his murder, a gunman had entered a classroom at Brown University in neighboring Rhode Island, killing 2 students and injuring 9 others during a routine study session. The perpetrator of both attacks was identified as Claudio Manuel Nieves Valente, a 48-year-old Portuguese national and former graduate student. Following a massive multi-state manhunt, Valente was found dead by self-unaliving in a storage facility in Salem, New Hampshire. Inside the storage unit, investigators found a series of videos recorded in Portuguese. The United States Attorney's Office for the District of Massachusetts, working with the Justice Department to translate the recordings, released transcripts that detail Valente's explicit motives. Valente and Loureiro had attended the University of Lisbon together in the late 1990s. While Loureiro went on to win the Presidential Early Career Award for Scientists and Engineers, leading programs at Princeton and MIT, Valente had failed to pursue an academic career, dropping out of a physics PhD program and struggling severely socially and professionally. In his confessional videos, Valente outlined his deep, festering resentment. He confessed that he had planned the Brown University attack for at least 6 semesters in order to leave the world on my own terms. After the chaotic shooting at Brown, where he admitted things went wrong because he attacked an auditorium rather than a regular classroom, Valente drove to Massachusetts and targeted his highly successful former classmate out of sheer personal jealousy and spite. On April 29, 2026, the FBI, alongside the local police in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, announced that the murder had no nexus to terrorism and was solely the result of Valente's violent dissatisfaction with his own life. The administration at MIT publicly confirmed that Loureiro was not working on any classified projects, noting that absolutely no classified research is performed on the MIT campus. His death was the result of America's ongoing epidemic of gun violence and a personal vendetta, not a shadow war over aliens. The narrative that federal scientists were being actively hunted also features Carl Gilmac, a 67-year-old astrophysicist who had recently retired from the California Institute of Technology's Infrared Processing and Analysis Center. Gilmac was a widely respected expert in dark matter, galactic structures, stellar populations, and exoplanets. His resume had a NASA Exceptional Scientific Achievement Medal, and that made him a prime candidate for internet sleuths looking to connect the dots to space secrets. On the morning of February 16, 2026, Gilmac was shot dead and killed on the front porch of his home in the high desert of Llano, California. If you only read a headline circulating on social media or watched viral TikTok videos, the murder appears exactly like a calculated professional hit. The police records and court documents, however, reveal a mundane crime of opportunity. The suspect is a 29-year-old local man named Freddie Snyder, and he had a documented history with the victim. In February 2025, Gilmac had called the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department to report Snyder for trespassing on his property. Snyder was arrested on weapons violations at that time. On the morning of the murder, Snyder allegedly carjacked a vehicle belonging to a family member. He drove to Gilmac's residence, resulting in the shooting on the porch. Snyder was arrested the very same day and formally charged by the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office with murder, carjacking, and burglary. The case was a stark, heartbreaking instance of local repeat offender violence, entirely disconnected from Gilmac's legacy of studying distant stars. The inclusion of Amy Eskridge and David Wilcock on the viral list shows how dark and frankly ethically compromised this conspiracy theory is. It's weaponizing severe mental health struggles to fuel online entertainment. Amy Eskridge was a 34-year-old entrepreneur from Huntsville, Alabama. She co-founded the Institute for Exotic Science and was deeply passionate about chemistry, genetic engineering, physics, and nanotechnology. In June 2022, 4 years before the 2026 panic began, Eskridge self-unalived because of her stated interest in unconventional physics, anti-gravity research, and a video which she recorded a month before her death complaining of burns she attributed to a guided energy weapon. Online communities retroactively declared her an early victim of the government hit squad. Her family was forced to endure the agony of her death a second time, issuing painful public statements begging the internet to stop the sensationalism. They said that Eskridge had been suffering from severe ongoing chronic pain and that the local police in Birmingham, Alabama had thoroughly investigated the scene and found nothing unusual about her tragic passing. People should realize that scientists die also and not make too much of it, her family pleaded, attempting to protect her memory. David Wilcock was a 53-year-old prominent figure in the UFO disclosure movement, known for his firm belief that the U.S. government is hiding information on extraterrestrial life. He died by self-aliving outside his home in Boulder County, Colorado in April 2026. By this time, the missing scientist narrative was already at a fever pitch online. The timing of his death poured gasoline on the fire, with theorists pointing to his vocal beliefs about government cover-ups as the exact reason he was allegedly silenced. Once again, internal battles of mental illness were erased by the internet, replaced by a fantasy of secret agents and suppressed alien technology. The remainder of the viral list disintegrates when looking at the basic statistical realities of government institutions and the mundane job titles of people involved. The conspiracy heavily cited employees from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico. At Los Alamos alone, the federal government employs nearly 20,000 people. Among the individuals cited by theorists were Melissa Cassius and Anthony Chavez, both associated with Los Alamos. Cassius was a 53-year-old administrative assistant who had worked there for 3 years, had no high-level security clearance, and had no access to community secrets. She was last seen walking alone on a highway carrying a backpack. Chavez is 78 and was simply a former employee of the laboratory who went missing in May 2025. Another frequently mentioned name was Stephen Garcia, a 48-year-old property custodian for the National Nuclear Security Administration's Kansas City National Security Campus in Albuquerque. He disappeared in August 2025. Like Cassius, Garcia worked in a support role far removed from classified physics that the conspiracy theorists are obsessed over. Jason Thomas is a 45-year-old executive at the pharmaceutical company Novartis. He drowned in Lake Quinnipiac in Massachusetts in December 2025. The medical examiner ruled that no foul play was involved. Michael David Hicks was a 59-year-old JPL scientist who worked on the DART project and near-Earth asteroids. He died in July 2023. Theorists have found his death highly suspicious because the exact cause was not immediately publicized. But Hicks suffered from an unspecified chronic medical condition, which was later revealed to be heart disease, and his family simply wished for privacy during the mourning period. Other names swept up in this conspiracy net include Frank Mywald, a 61-year-old JPL principal researcher who passed away from natural causes in July 2024, and Joshua LeBlanc, a 29-year-old electrical engineer at the NASA Marshall Space Flight Center who died in an automobile collision outside of Huntsville, Alabama in July 2025. A former Department of Energy official dismantled the core illusion of this conspiracy when he was interviewed by the international media. If you attach nuclear weapons facility and some sketchy-sounding job title, it can conceal how mundane someone's job may be. People do just die. Strokes, heart disease, mugging, it happens. When the raw data is extracted from the breathless cadence of a TikTok video and looked at objectively, the absolute lack of correlation is undeniable. These deaths and disappearances were not a sudden coordinated purge initiated by a foreign adversary or shadow government. They were the inevitability of human mortality playing out over 4 years across a massive population of professionals. There's no clustered geography, no unified timeline, and no mechanism of harm. There are tragic traffic collisions, wilderness accidents, heartbreaking mental health crises, chronic illnesses, and localized violence. If a highly organized shadow government entity or foreign intelligence service were executing nuclear scientists, they would not use a bizarre combination of random carjackings in California, a disgruntled shooter in New England, and heart disease over the span of 48 months. But how did it manage to capture the attention of millions and eventually prompt federal action at the highest levels of the United States government? The answer lies at the dangerous intersection of human psychology and the architecture of our modern social media platforms. The primary psychological driver of the panic is a cognitive phenomenon known as apophenia. Modern sociologist Robert Bartholomew defines apophenia as the human tendency to perceive meaningful links in entirely unrelated events. This is the bread and butter of most conspiracies. The human brain is wired for pattern recognition. It is a survival mechanism that allows individuals to connect rustling grass to the presence of a hidden tiger. In an age where billions of data points are accessible instantly, and in fact being constantly thrown at us from our phones and TVs and computers, this mechanism misfires, finding predators where there's nothing. When an individual looks at a population of roughly 2 million scientific researchers in the United States, and keep in mind, about 700,000 of these researchers hold top secret clearances, it's a mathematical certainty that some will die of heart attacks. Some will be involved in car crashes. The overwhelming statistical reality is completely ignored in favor of the conspiracy theory. The specific cognitive blind spot is termed base rate neglect. which describes the tendency to focus on specific or anecdotal evidence while completely ignoring broad statistical generalizations that naturally explain whatever is happening. Social media posts plant the idea that there has been a coordinated attack on American scientists. This primes users to reinterpret random deaths and disappearances as suspicious and sinister. Jesse Walker, who is the author of The United States of Paranoia, a conspiracy theory, further explains that artificially expanding a list by adding unrelated homicides and natural deaths is a classic, well-documented tactic used to make conspiracy theories look overwhelmingly credible through sheer volume. It's a cognitive bias. This psychological vulnerability is ruthlessly weaponized by the recommendation algorithms. TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube do not optimize for factual accuracy or nuanced context. If YouTube did, I would get millions of views, right? They optimize purely for engagement, watch time, and emotional arousal. A video explaining that a 59-year-old man died of heart disease gains zero traction. A video claiming that an aerospace engineer was silenced by directed energy weapons to protect alien government secrets triggers fear, curiosity, and millions of people share it. The algorithms act as digital sorting mechanisms. They take a car accident in Alabama and a missing hiker in California, and they strip away the context of each event, and then packages these isolated tragedies into a single terrifying story directly delivered to a user's phone in a continuous 60-second loop. The user experiences the illusion that these events are happening simultaneously, right now, and everywhere. The algorithm literally manufactures a crisis out of things that happen every day. What made the 2026 missing scientist panic unique and dangerous was the speed at which it infected the highest levels of the United States government. As the videos went viral, political figures gave it a look of official credibility. Representative James Comer, a Republican from Kentucky and chair of the House Oversight Committee, legitimized the internet rumor on national television. Once you see the facts, it would suggest that something sinister could be happening, and it would be a national security concern, Comer stated. He admitted that he initially thought the speculation sounded like a crazy conspiracy theory before changing his mind. Comer was joined by Representative Eric Burleson of Missouri, who chairs a subcommittee on economic growth and energy policy. Together, they drafted formal letters dated April 20th, 2026 to the Pentagon, NASA, the Department of Energy, and the FBI, demanding staff-level briefings by April 27th on what they categorize as a grave threat to U.S. national security. Burleson went so far as to suggest to the national media outlets that the events had all the hallmarks of a foreign operation, floating the idea that China, Russia, or Iran was actively orchestrating a mass assassination campaign on American soil. The hysteria reached Donald Trump, where Donald Trump was asked directly by reporters about the tabloid claims of 10 missing scientists. And Trump, of course, leaned into the narrative rather than dismissing it, calling the situation pretty serious stuff, noting that he had just left a meeting on the subject and promised that answers would be delivered in a week and a half. That week and a half is come and gone, by the way. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed that the administration was actively working with federal agencies to review all of the cases to identify potential commonalities. FBI Director Kash Patel publicly assured the nation that the Bureau was formally investigating the matter, declaring, if there's any connections that lead to nefarious conduct or conspiracy, this FBI will make the appropriate arrest. This political reaction created a dangerous feedback loop. The internet generated a baseless theory, and politicians reacting to the online engagement launched official inquiries. And then the internet then pointed to those very same official inquiries as undeniable proof that the theory was real all along. Energy and security experts watch with sadness. Scott Rocker, who is vice president for nuclear materials security at the Nuclear Threat Initiative and had worked 15 years on government nuclear security, explicitly dismantled the foreign espionage angle floated by Congressman Burleson. Rocker noted that while nations like Iran have indeed seen their nuclear scientists assassinated, Iran operates a very small, highly concentrated program. But we're not like Iran. We have thousands of scientists. We have robust infrastructure. So there would be nothing strategic Iran could achieve by taking out 10 or 20 of our nuclear scientists. When the dust finally settles on the viral conspiracy, the internet simply moves on to its next obsession. The true cost of the 2026 missing scientist panic is borne entirely by the families left behind, who were forced to watch the deaths of their loved ones turned into cheap content and political posturing. Multiple family members have expressed deep anguish and grief over having their private tragedies connected to what they characterize as profound absurdity. Susan McCasland's Wilkerson, the wife of the missing general, tried to diffuse the hysteria. She wrote public statements clarifying that her husband had been completely retired for over a decade, refuting the idea that he possessed hidden knowledge about UFOs or Roswell. Instead of being allowed the space to mourn and coordinate the search for her husband, she was forced to debate amateur internet detectives about alien bodies and shadow governments. The Missing Scientist Conspiracy of 2026, it demonstrates how easily unrelated events can be stitched together by the human mind's desperate search for meaning, amplified by ruthless engagement algorithms, and validated by opportunistic politicians. It shows us that the true danger is of paranoia itself and the willingness of society to sacrifice the truth of human tragedy on the altar of a compelling, algorithmically optimized story. Make sure that you're subscribed to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Please like and share this video. If you'd like to support the channel, you can become a member of the channel for $1.99. I appreciate that. You can also support the channel by continuing to watch, like, share, hype, and comment on my videos. And I do appreciate you watching my videos. And please stay spooky.